I've grown tomatoes for years. Some good seasons, some downright disappointing ones. But nothing prepared me for what happened this summer. It all started because I ran out of space in my usual raised beds. You know how it is. Every spring, I get overly ambitious, I start way too many seedlings, and by May, I'm scrambling to find spots for them all. This year, I had 4 extra Brandywine heirlooms, and I didn't have the heart to toss them. So I looked over at this rough patch of soil on the edge of the yard. Honestly, I'd been ignoring it for years. The ground was hard-packed, full of weeds, and I swear I'd seen mushrooms growing there after heavy rains. But under all that mess, there was something else. You see, last fall, I dumped a huge pile of unfinished compost right in that corner. I was too lazy to turn it, and winter came fast, so it just sat there, slowly breaking down. It was a mix of grass clippings, leaves, coffee grounds, eggshells, kitchen scraps from months. Honestly, I figured I'd ruined the spot. But in early spring, I decided to test it. I dug in, and to my surprise, it was rich, dark, smelled like earth after rain, worms everywhere, that kind of soft, spongy soil that crumbles in your hand. So I thought, why not? I planted all 4 Brandywines right into that patch. No fertilizers, no amendments, just a bit of straw mulch on top. And then I kind of forgot about them. Because here's the thing. I was busy with my main garden. The tomatoes in the raised beds had drip irrigation, trellises, organic fish emulsion scheduled every 2 weeks. Those were the priority plants. These 4 Brandywines, they were the leftovers, survival of the fittest. But 3 weeks later, I walked past that compost corner and I did a double take. Those forgotten Brandywines were twice as tall as the ones in my main garden. Their leaves were deep green, no yellowing, no curling, stems thick as my thumb, and they weren't even staked, just standing there, proud, swaying a little in the breeze like they knew something I didn't. At first, I thought, okay, lucky start, maybe that compost cooked hotter than I thought. But then the flowers came, dozens of them. And by early July, I was harvesting the biggest, juiciest Brandywines I've ever grown. I'm talking fruit the size of 2 fists with that classic heirloom shape, lumpy, imperfect, but absolutely gorgeous. And the taste? Sweet, tangy, with that deep tomato flavor you only get from old varieties. Meanwhile, my pampered tomatoes in the raised beds, they looked fine. But compared to the compost corner, they were lagging. Smaller fruit, less vigor. I was baffled. So I started digging in, literally and figuratively. Here's what I found. According to Cornell Cooperative Extension, tomatoes thrive best in loamy soil with high organic matter, ideally 5% or more. The problem with many store-bought raised bed mixes is that they're too light and sterile. Good drainage, yes, but they lack the microbial life that roots depend on. That forgotten compost pile was basically a living buffet. The worms, the bacteria, the fungi, they'd been hard at work all winter, breaking down everything into plant-ready nutrients. And not just NPK. We're talking trace minerals, humic acids, enzymes, the stuff you can't buy in a bag. And I also learned from Epic Gardening that heirloom tomatoes, especially indeterminate types like Brandywine, are heavy feeders, but also incredibly sensitive to soil conditions. They don't just want food, they want a community, a living soil ecosystem. And that's exactly what they got in that compost patch. By late July, the compost corner had become my favorite part of the garden. I started calling it Tomato Alley. I added some bamboo stakes just to keep the plants from falling over. No pruning, no spraying, no babying. Just straw mulch and the occasional drink from the hose. And the harvest? Insane! I picked over 35 pounds of fruit from those 4 plants. One Brandywine gave me a 1.4-pound tomato. I weighed it twice because I couldn't believe it. My wife sliced it and said, "This is what a tomato is supposed to taste like." That's when it hit me. For years, I'd been chasing perfection, adding this amendment, trying that trellis system, obsessing over calcium sprays and blossom end rot prevention, and yet the best tomatoes I've ever grown came from the one spot I didn't try to control. The compost corner wasn't perfect. It was messy. It was random, but it was alive. That changed everything for me. I stopped treating soil like a product and started seeing it as a process. Now I've started building more compost piles, not in bins, but right in place. Fall leaves, kitchen scraps, a sprinkle of native soil to jumpstart the microbes, then cover it up and let time do its thing. It's called in situ composting. And according to the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources, it's one of the best low-input methods for regenerating soil health, especially in backyard gardens where space is limited. And the crazy part is, it's free. You're literally feeding your plants with your leftovers. Of course, there were a few hiccups. I got one tomato with some cracking because I forgot to water during a hot spell. And yes, I lost a few fruit to squirrels as usual. But overall, this was the healthiest, happiest tomato crop I've had in a decade. Even my neighbor noticed. He came over one evening chewing on a slice like it was the first tomato he'd ever tasted. He asked what I did different this year. And I told him, I stopped trying so hard. It felt weird saying that, but it's true. Gardening isn't about control. It's about cooperation. When you let nature do its thing, when you give microbes, worms, and fungi a chance to build the soil, you get results that no bottle of fertilizer can replicate. And you get fruit that tastes like it's supposed to, like sunshine and summer and something your grandmother might have grown. That's what Brandywine tomatoes gave me this year. So if you're out there struggling with your tomatoes, maybe it's not your plants. Maybe it's the soil. Or maybe, like me, you've just been trying too hard in all the wrong places. Here's my challenge to you. Pick a corner of your yard this fall. Dump your compost there. Don't overthink it. Let the worms do their job. And next spring, plant a tomato, or 4. Don't water every day. Don't fertilize on schedule. Just observe. You might be shocked, too. Next week, I'm planting a few Cherokee purples into the same spot, but this time I'm going to add a layer of biochar underneath to see if it holds moisture better during heat waves. We'll see if the magic keeps going. But for now, this summer taught me more than any gardening book ever did. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for your plants is to get out of the way. So just a couple of weeks ago, I cleared out the last of the Brandywines from Tomato Alley. Most of the vines were spent, but they'd given more than I ever expected. And I couldn't just let that rich soil sit empty. So I decided to try something new. This time, I picked up 3 Cherokee purple seedlings from a local heirloom nursery. Big fan of the variety. Deep burgundy skin, rich flavor, kind of smoky almost. I wanted to see if lightning could strike twice. But I also added a twist. Biochar. Now, if you haven't heard of it, biochar is basically charcoal made from organic matter, burned slowly with little oxygen. It's porous, like a sponge, and it can hold nutrients and water in the soil. According to research from Washington State University Extension, biochar can improve soil structure and microbial activity, especially when it's charged first with compost tea or worm tea. So I mixed in a thin layer, about a ½ inch of biochar soaked in compost tea, right under each transplant hole. Same soil, same straw mulch, still no fertilizer, no store-bought inputs, just the composted base and a little twist with the biochar. And let me tell you, those Cherokee purples took off like they had something to prove. Within 10 days, I saw explosive growth. Not just height, but leaf spread, branching, dense, bushy, but not crowded. The stems were incredibly sturdy, almost woody near the base. No sign of transplant shock at all. Even better, the soil held moisture longer. We had a stretch of 95-degree Fahrenheit days last week. Normally, I'd be dragging hoses, worried about blossom drop, but the Cherokee purples barely flinched. I dug down 2 inches, and the soil was still cool, still damp. That biochar layer, I think it's doing its job. Now, I haven't tasted the fruit yet. It's just setting, but I've got a good feeling. If the Brandywines were any indication, we're in for another treat. What's wild is this whole experiment, Brandywines, compost corner, biochar twist, was never planned. It came from running out of space and being a little lazy, or maybe just letting go of the urge to overmanage everything. I used to think better gardening meant more control, more products, more routines, more tricks. But this summer showed me the opposite. Sometimes better gardening means stepping back and letting the soil take the lead. That realization's changed the way I see the rest of my yard. I've started looking at every patch of grass, every forgotten corner, as potential. A future compost hub, a place to test something new, to let the worms and fungi get to work underground before I ever plant a thing. Because here's the truth. Once you taste a tomato grown in truly living soil, everything else tastes flat. You stop chasing pretty leaves or perfect trellises. You start chasing that flavor, that weight in your hand when you pick a fruit that smells like sunshine and ripeness, that first slice on the cutting board when juice runs out and seeds stick to your fingers. You can't buy that in a store. And honestly, you can't fake it with synthetic fertilizer either. Believe me, I've tried. So what's next? Well, I'm thinking of turning that whole edge of the yard into kind of a no-till food strip. Just layers of compost, leaves, and straw. Let it sit all winter. Maybe add some crimson clover for cover. Come spring, tomatoes, peppers, maybe even a few melons if I feel brave. And yeah, I'll probably sneak in more biochar. Maybe even try a control patch without it, just to see the difference. Because now, I'm not just gardening, I'm learning. Not from YouTube trends or shiny products, but from the soil itself, from observation, trial, error, and surprise. That's what I love most about backyard gardening. You don't need a degree, you just need curiosity and a patch of dirt. So if you're still watching and you've got a little corner of your yard nobody uses, start a compost pile. Even if it's messy, even if it attracts a few flies, just let it sit. Let the microbes throw a party. Come spring, tuck a tomato seedling in and see what happens. It might just blow your mind. And if you're curious how these Cherokee purples turn out, whether the biochar lives up to the hype, I'll be checking in next week with an update. Maybe a taste test, maybe another surprise. Because that's the thing with gardening. You think you're just growing food, but really, you're growing attention, patience, gratitude, and sometimes the best tomatoes you've ever had. See you next week.